Well, welcome along everybody to Snetterton for round 23, the penultimate round of the GT Cup Championship for 2021. We've got the sprint race coming up around this 300 circuit is the configuration that we are on, which means it's the full Snetterton circuit, just under 3 miles long. That's around about 4 3/4 kilometres. And the weather, well, cloudy today. It was more Wetterton than Snetterton yesterday, as we had abysmal weather, to say the least, over the course of the afternoon. A little bit breezy, but at least it is dry today. And the crowds are going to be much more happier than they were in the difficult conditions yesterday. It wasn't just wet, it was breezy as well. So it was a difficult day for everybody. Better day today. We've got the sprint race coming up. We'll have our pit stop race later on. And of course, we've got an overall champion to decide over the course of the day. So it's day 2 of racing here at Snetterton. Let's look back at some of the highlights from yesterday. The lights go out, they accelerate their way up towards Richie's corner for the first time. Richard Neary has the inside line. Steve Burgess, though, on the less polished surface. The outer line might work here in the wet conditions. Let's hope that everybody treads gingerly through the first couple of corners, because it's a very full grid. And a Group GTB leading Porsche, Group GTA leading Ginetta, Group GTH, I think that will be leading McLaren over the start-finish line, as Josh Jackson propels himself past the Make It Happen Racing Chris Hart-driven Ginetta. GT4 McLaren with a bit more grunt in the straight line. And off, that is the Group GTH leader that is off. Steve Burgess goes through at the wheel of the Radical, picks up the place going in towards Richie's corner, but I think ran a little bit wide. Yeah, so straight back through goes John Dillon into what will be the lead of the race by the look of things, because Richard Neary must have made a mistake on that lap in the middle sector. I think the Mercedes has had an off, so this is now for the lead of the race. Yep, then that's the Mercedes behind in 5th place. So Richard Neary did have an off somewhere, and that has dropped him down into 5th position. And that is Warren Gilbert is off. We've not seen a single mistake from Warren all season hardly, so a spin at the wheel of the car that was leading, Group GTC, just going to show how tricky the conditions are now getting out there. Oh, and there's an off. That's Fraser Smart, who had taken over the lead of Group GTC at the wheel of the Lamborghini. That's going to put Warren Gilbert, who had the spin a couple of laps ago, back through. Through goes Warren Gilbert. So shortly lived lead in Group GTC for Fraser Smart. The fight we're looking at here is Richard Chamberlain, who has still got bottled up behind him the newer Porsche of Seamus Jennings. This is for 6th and for 7th position. This is James Guest now trying to get the overlap on Mike Price at the wheel of the Balfe Motorsport prepared McLaren, whilst Lauren Demise is trying to weave his way through the order. There's also a spin and a recovering car as well. That's the Fox Motorsport car. Sitting sideways in the middle of the circuit on the exit of Palmer is James Gass, who's had a spin at the wheel of the Feathers Motorsport Aston Martin. Oh, and as he tries to rejoin the circuit, he takes out Carl Cavers, I'm afraid. Carl Cavers then has a spin directly in front of Ed Borodin. Everybody having problems in these tricky conditions here. And off has gone John Dillon, who was the race leader. So no matter where we look, cars are having problems. This is potentially the final lap of the race for John Dillon. There's Ed Borodin trying to reverse the car out of the way. Steve Burgess, through all of this in the Radical, has gone through now to take up the lead of the race, but is still under pressure from Morgan Tilbrook at the wheel of the GT3 McLaren. You don't know where to look because there's so many squabbles going on, and cars making mistakes and drivers making mistakes in these tricky conditions. And Morgan Tilbrook now is trying to side his way up the inside of the Radical. Couldn't quite do it as they went through Oggies. He would still win Group GT3 even if he sits behind the Radical, which is moving around like crazy as it heads through Cora. Morgan Tilbrook is very decisive, dives up the inside heading in towards the final corner. Can he get the car stopped in time? Steve Burgess is going to get the overlap, and with a bit more power the Radical on the run to the line should grab the win as they head up towards the start finish line. It looks as though it's going to be a win for Steve Burgess. The extra power just telling us they came out of Murray. Steve Burgess comes through to claim the win. Morgan Tilbrook in 2nd place, but will pick up top honours in Group GT3. That was a great fight between those two, but a win in Group GTB, and that does now mean that Nick Phelps is the Group GTB champion, subject to official confirmation, of course. Just a single formation lap for them this time through, and it is Morgan Tilbrook and Steve Burgess that line up there on the front row of the grid. Round 22 of the 2021 GT Cup Championship is go here at Snetterton. Enormous ball of spray that everybody is having to peer their way through, and it's only Morgan Tilbrook and Steve Burgess that have got the clear windscreens at the moment. Morgan Tilbrook's got the inside line. Steve Burgess now with power steering at the wheel of the Radical. What can he do around the outside line? And it looks as though they're still going to be side by side. Oh, Burgess on the grass a little bit as he gets the Radical back off the grass. Through has gone Richard Neary. So Morgan Tilbrook leads, Richard Neary second. Only now does John Dillon get going from the pit lane area. So that car has got huge amounts to try and make up. There is Michael Coker at the wheel of the slightly older Aston Martin. I think he's going solo in this race and looking for the lead of the race, and diving up inside goes Richard Neary. So championship leading Team ABBA Racing Mercedes through and ahead of Morgan Tilbrook's McLaren. And John Dillon, who started from the pit lane, has had a spin by the look of things. Now the lights are out on the safety car, which means we are going to go back to green flag racing this next time through. So it's up to Richard Neary as to when he wants to get things underway. Now for Richard Neary, an extra 15 seconds to spend in the pit lane relative to the car that sits behind him on the road, which is Morgan Tilbrook, who's got an extra 20 to spend in the pit lane. So as long as Richard Neary is ahead of Morgan Tilbrook, then that still puts him in a strong position once we've cycled through the pit stops. But there are other cars out there in the group that haven't got any time penalties at all to worry about. However, it looks as though the safety car, I'm afraid to say, is coming back out again. So just as we got things back underway, we've had something else occur out on circuit. Not entirely sure. I wonder if it might be weather conditions that perhaps have deteriorated to a degree that the clerk of the course has opted to put out the safety car, because I can't at the moment see any other cars that are not circulating. We know of the whereabouts of John Dillon's car, and Charlotte Gilbert has just gone through sector 2 as the last car, so it can only be weather conditions. Yeah, diving their way into the pit lane. So in comes Richard Neary from the lead of the race. Door opens, out comes Richard Neary. In goes the seat insert for the slightly smaller Sam Neary, the teenager. So in comes Nick Phelps, in comes Josh Jackson, in comes Stephen Walton. So Charlotte Gilbert, I think, is the only one that has opted not to pit at this stage. Charlotte Gilbert pits this time through. However, I'm afraid to say that is a red flag, and that means that we are going to have to stop the race. So that is an enormous shame that we are potentially going to see the end of this race taking place. Well, I said it was wet yesterday here at Snetterton, and it really affected the racing, but better weather conditions today. And one person who'll be rather pleased that maybe she wasn't here at Snetterton yesterday, Michelle Livings, is down there in the pit lane. Michelle, a much, much better day for you today as you soak up the atmosphere for the final championship rounds there at Snetterton.
Absolutely, Mark. I don't do rain. So, yes, it is. The sun's starting to come out now, so it is looking much better, significantly better. It was a wet one, but I tell you what, those horrendous weather conditions yesterday actually proved quite beneficial for one driver in particular, that being Charlotte Gilbert, and I managed to catch up with her a little bit earlier on. Charlotte, the weather was definitely with you yesterday, wasn't it?
I would never have thought so at the beginning. I mean, it's incredibly tricky in my car, because I don't have, as I mentioned before, I don't have ABS, traction control and paddle shift and all the drive aids that benefit you when it's wet. So I kind of dread it when it's raining, and I don't really relish the idea of getting in the car and driving in the wet, but it's got to be done. And it just was the idea that I would get the car around. I needed 4 points in order for me to secure second place in the GTB Championship. So the idea really was just to get round and just go around, and I did have the option of just doing a lap, coming in, securing the 20 points that I would have got just to start the race. But I did a lap and decided not to come in. I thought, no, you know what? I'm going to carry on. And I thought, right, let's do the whole race. Let's be sporting about it. And I did it. And the weather just got progressively worse. The rain was getting heavier and heavier. And as the weather got worse, it just seemed more inevitable that there might be a red flag. And I don't have anybody I'm sharing with. I don't have a pro driver, I don't have a co-driver, so I'm doing the whole thing on my own. And we waited for the window to open, and of course I came round, and the entire, all the classes that were in my window, they all piled in, and obviously they're going to hand over to their pro drivers. And Darren, my radio guy, who's just a brilliant architect of these things, said stay out as long as you can. And then he said, right, pitted. And he kind of predicted that there was going to be a red flag, and of course I was the last one to come in, and wound a lap back. And who was behind the safety car on that previous lap? Me.
It's fantastic.
So
yeah, so basically red flag and the count back, and you got the race.
yeah, I know, and I do give myself some credit, because it's an animal of a car to drive around here, and I stuck it out and I kept it on the track. Unlike perhaps this morning, we'll go into that later. But it's really a real team effort. I mean, my team, Top Cats Racing, are just the most amazing team, and I'm totally reliant on Darren, who tells me everything to the T, and and that's why I go out really. I go out with confidence, really, because of him. So fantastic, really.
Well, it's a bit of a first, because apparently you are the first female all-out race winner.
Yeah, it was a surprise, because we didn't really we didn't really have any idea until afterwards, and Paul Bailey came running in going, "Your wife's just won the race. Your wife's just won the race." I was like, "What? What are you talking about?" It's like, so we looked on the screen, and as we kind of looked at the screens changed back again, and I was at the top. I was like, "What?" I'm taking that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's really congratulations and well done. It's great. Let's have a think about today now. What about your qualifying? How did that go?
Yeah, so I'm trying to push hard. So I had an out lap, and I wanted to get a qualifying lap in the first 2 laps after that. And from my seating position, I've got a very bulbous nose on my car, so everywhere looks really dry. But it's very slippery at the end of the pit straight here, and the previous laps I'd managed to cadence brake to get the car to slow down before I turn in, and I probably was a little overconfident, and I didn't quite pull it off in the last lap, and I've ended up in the gravel. So I don't care, that's fine. I'm usually quite good from towards the back of the grid anyway, and I'm just gonna work myself to the ground to get myself up there and see what I can do in the race. So
absolutely, you've got much drier conditions coming up today anyway.
I need.
Well, listen, good luck and congratulations.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Well, the cars are now heading out to do their formation round and get ready on the grid. Mark, I wanted to just ask you about, we've had a dropout from qualifier in actual fact, the Greystone McLaren, I believe, the number 77.
Yeah, that's right, Michelle. Yeah, Mark Hopton, who was the amateur driver behind the wheel of that, sharing with the pro driver Adam Carroll. But Mark had a bit of an off. Of course, we had so much rain yesterday that whilst the track is dry, the grass is rather wet still, and Mark came out of the fast left-hand kink at Hamilton, and the car pitched over to the left-hand side of the circuit, and he struck the barriers on the way into Oggies, the next corner. And whilst Mark is okay, he is not wanting to race for the rest of the day, and equally as much the car looked rather second-hand when I saw it. Tim Mullen, who I spoke to, the team representative from Greystone GT, and Adam Carroll both confirmed whilst Mark is fine, yeah, the car is irreparable. So we've lost one today. That's a sad end to the championship season for them, but it's so good that Greystone have brought through so many drivers from track days into the GT Cup this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, it did cost us a little bit of time as well ahead of this sprint race. Going back to Charlotte, I believe that she's unfortunately on the back of the grid, isn't she? Do you want to take us through that, Mark?
Absolutely, yeah. I can guide you through the grid if you wish. So round 23 of the GT Cup Championship will see on pole position the Team ABBA Racing Mercedes in the hands of Richard Neary for this race, and alongside will be Steve Burgess. Row 2 of the grid is Morgan Tilbrook and John Dillon. The third row of the grid sees Graham Tilley in his Nissan lineup alongside Seamus Jennings in the Porsche, and row 4 is Richard Chamberlain's Porsche alongside the Ferrari of Laurent Demise. The next row of the grid will be Warren Gilbert. He of course is in with a shout for the overall championship, as are the Nearys who start from pole, and Roy Millington sits alongside, with row 6 being comprised by Nick Phelps in the Porsche and the Aston Martin that sits alongside for this race. That will be driven by Mike Brown. Next row of the grid is James Guess, who lines up alongside Stephen Walton with then Josh Jackson on row number 8, and he has for company Tom Rawlings. The next row of the grid will see row number 9, which is Simon Orange and Paul Bailey, with Andre Borodin and Mike Price on row number 10. Row number 11 of the grid, on the inside of the 11th row of the grid, we will see Carl Cavers. Carl Cavers has for company the car in the hands of Steve Ruston. And then row number 12, missing from the graphic, but that should be James Simons that lines up alongside James Townsend. And then as we head further down through the grid, the next row of the grid will be the number 23 car, which is Ian Campbell alongside David Holloway. The number 17 car for this race will be driven by Patrick Collins, who has for company Ron Johnson. And then the final couple of rows of the grid will see the car of Chris Kemp alongside Chris Murphy, who drives solo today. Michael Coker did all of the driving yesterday, but Chris Murphy all day today. And then the final couple of rows of the grid, Richard Mason and Alex Stevenson. And off the back of the grid will be Charlotte Gilbert, as we heard from Michelle. So the cars making their way out onto circuit. That gives you the grid for round 23 of the championship. And Michelle, whilst we have managed to sort out a few of our drivers in terms of the championships, there's still a couple of championships up for grabs. Group GTO not decided just as yet. The overall championship not decided just as yet.
Of course, yeah, I was going to say the battle for overall title is well and truly underway in these two races today. So it's quite exciting. There's points in it, and really it still could go sort of either way, couldn't it, Mark? It
could. Well, the car that's to your right-hand side there, that's Sam and Richard Neary. They lead the championship coming into this race on 488.5 points, because the race was stopped so early yesterday. It was only half championship points. In reality, they are 32 points ahead of the Warren Gilbert and Jensen Lund Lamborghini. Now, that's the point score, but if that Lamborghini starts all the races here today, it will have also started all the races at Donington. The final 8 races give you an extra 20 championship points. So they could get an extra 20 championship points, which the Nearys won't get, because they failed to start race 4 at Donington Park. So the gap could go from 32 to 12 very quickly.
It's incredible that it can change so much. I'm actually here with the Nearys now. Now, Richard, you qualified, didn't you, today? But we've got Sam actually driving in this race. How did it all go for you?
Yeah, fine. We ended up on pole, but not by a very large margin. So, we just need a nice clean race and try and get away.
We were just talking literally about the points and how you are significantly ahead, but again, anything could happen, couldn't it?
Yeah, the points table looks quite misleading at the moment, because it looks like we're 30 points in the lead, but because we didn't do one of the Donington races, we get subtracted 20 points off our tally, so we're actually only 11 points in the lead.
Wow.
So it looks a lot different than what it looks really.
Yeah. Are you feeling confident going out? And Sam, obviously, sitting there in the car. Quick word.
Go on.
How are you feeling, Sam?
Yeah, good. Yeah, it's just another sprint race, you know. There's no worries about the championship now. It's just do my job and see where we end up after 25 minutes.
He seems very calm, cool and collected, Richard.
Let's hope so.
Well, listen, I'll let you carry on doing the pep talk there. So there you go. You've just heard it from our current race leaders, but anything could change. And we've got Steve Burgess as well in the Radical that's just next to me here as well, also on the front line. So, yeah, we're just gearing up to get this race underway. We haven't quite cleared the grid yet, Mark, but I think things will be heading off very soon. And the good news is I'm squinting, so that must mean that the sun's out.
We didn't see much of that yesterday. You must have brought it with you today, Michelle. That's why. So the grid has, as you can see, just starting to be cleared now. There's a few of the mechanics that are now just standing alongside the cars, but the vast majority of the other team members have already been asked by our officials to begin to leave the grid. This is the sprint race, remember, so there's no pit stops, there's no driver changes. So the grid, as I gave you it, those drivers will remain behind the wheel. I think I was notified it was Richard Neary that was starting, so I'm pleased we managed to catch up with Richard to confirm it is Sam that's driving. So the 1 minute board is held aloft. You can see the BMW safety car with its lights illuminated is at the front of the grid, and it will guide them round for what will be a single formation lap. And then at the end of that formation lap, this final 25-minute race of the season will get underway, because, of course, the pit stop race scheduled for later on this afternoon is a 50-minute affair. So mathematically, the championship is not likely to be stitched up in this race. It's wonderful that the overall championship is now highly likely to go to the final race of the championship season, but we are more than likely to crown our Group GTO champion in this race, which could well be the McLaren of Paul Bailey, but really depends on how Steve Burgess gets on. Steve did take an overall win yesterday in that Radical. He is driving solo this weekend. He has shared the car with longtime co-driver Ben Dimmock over the course of the whole season, but Ben is not available over the course of this weekend, so Steve is going solo. And another car that's worth mentioning as well, because he did not race yesterday. It was on medical advice. He wasn't feeling very well and was suggested that he should rest yesterday. And that's the number 23 Greystone GT McLaren of Ian Campbell. Now, Ian Campbell shares with the pro driver Ollie Webb, but Ian had quite a nasty ear infection yesterday. He's feeling a lot better today. He's taken some medication, has done what was advised of yesterday, which was rest amongst other things, and whilst not feeling 100%, he is feeling a lot better today. And wonderful that even Ian yesterday, whilst he wasn't feeling a bit rotten, he still tuned into the live stream. He was still commenting on live stream as well, and sending us information. So it's nice to see that the drivers watch as well. So when they're not around, the drivers do watch the live stream as well. So off they go on their formation lap, but substantively different conditions to yesterday when they headed off on the formation lap. And there is the lady that made the history yesterday, Charlotte Gilbert, at the back of the grid, following her off into the gravel over the course of this morning. But she'll certainly be more than happy that the conditions are pretty much ideal today, really. All of that moisture that we had yesterday has all disappeared. All right, and there's Paul Bailey. Not surprised he's starting that McLaren from the pit garage. They've been doing the maths, and he did suggest to me that they might opt to start from the pit lane just to stay out of trouble and accumulate the championship points that they need to try and put the Group GTO overall title out of reach. So that car isn't in with a chance of winning the GT Cup Championship, the overall championship, but is highly likely to become the Group GTO champion for this year, having raced a Ferrari at the beginning of the year. There was the Brabham in the middle part of the year, and then due to the Brabham just still being in the workshop, but I think parts have arrived, but they just didn't have the car time to turn it round after 2 weeks ago at Donington Park to then get the Brabham re-prepped for this race meeting. So it's missed a couple of meetings on the trot now, the Brabham. So they've used this very rare McLaren Can-Am, so starting that car from the pit lane. So with the cars just weaving to try and get that last little bit of temperature into the Control Pirelli slick tyres that they will all run. We will pick up on what's going on in the individual groups as they head out there. If you're tuning in for the first time, Group GT3 is for the GT3 homologated cars, so things like you could see racing in the British GT Championship or the GT World Championship or GT Championship in Europe. We've got Group GTO, which is for the open specification cars, so the likes of the Radical and Richard Chamberlain's Porsche 935 sit in that, and the car that starts from the pit lane sits in that. We've got Group GTC, which is for later model Challenge and Cup cars, so that's the things like Ferrari 488 built to European specification and Lamborghini's built to Super Trofeo specification. We've got Group GTB cars, which is for early Challenge cars. That's the likes of the early 911 Cup cars, and also Charlotte Gilbert's Group GTB. Marcus Mantis sits in that. Group GTH, which is the far most populous class now, is for GT4 homologated cars, and Group GTA is for lower spec Cup cars and Challenge cars and one make cars. That's largely dominated over the course of this season by the likes of Ginetta G55 Super Cup cars. That gives you the different groups. We don't call them classes, we call them groups in the GT Cup, and we'll try and pick up on what's happening with each one of those as this 25-minute race is about to get underway. So the penultimate round, round 23 of the GT Cup Championship for 2021 is heading in 2x2 order up to the lights. Sam Neary and Steve Burgess there on the front row of the grid. The Group GT3 Mercedes, the Group GTO Radical. Lights go out and we go away and racing for the penultimate time this season up towards Richie's corner, and the extra straight line speed of the Group GTO Radical propels Steve Burgess into the lead of the race, side by side further down through the order, but everybody again just being sensible with this capacity grid over the course of this weekend. And Burgess already under pressure from BRDC Rising Star Sam Neary, who at the wheel of the Team ABBA Mercedes is looking to try and pick up on the overall race lead. It looks as though John Dillon has slotted himself through into third position, but Sam Neary now trying around the outside at Palmer in a straight line. The Radical should have the speed, but there's contact, I'm afraid. That is Mike Price that is off, and also James Simons is off at the wheel of his Group GTC Lamborghini, as we are side by side for the lead of the race. And has Sam Neary done enough here to pick up the lead? No, still he's not having it, Steve Burgess. Sam Neary now though has the inside line for the next corner, so I think the inevitable is going to happen, and indeed has happened. Sam Neary picks up the lead of the race, braving it out around the outside at 2 or 3 consecutive corners. Good driving from both to give each other just about enough room. And it is Sam Neary that's gone through to pick up the lead of the race, with Steve Burgess in second. And in third place, as we say, is John Dillon. There, limping his way round, is, I'm afraid to say, Simon Orange. So Simon Orange limping his way round. James Simons with significant damage to the front right corner, or the whole front of the Lamborghini, limping his way round. And as a result of what's been going on, I think we are going to see the safety car come out. And I didn't see the incident, but I could only assume perhaps the concertina effect going into the Wilson hairpin with 30 plus cars, mid 30 cars on the grid, that just somebody was either caught out or missed a braking point or was unsighted or something has happened. So I'm afraid to say that James Simons' race has come to a very short end, I'm afraid, the ex-F3 Cup racer. So safety car, having only just gone into the pit lane, just having started the race, is already now picking up our race leader, Sam Neary, who heads over the start-finish line. And there is the rather battered GT4 McLaren of Mike Price, who I think is struggling to get out of the gull-wing doors on that car, such as the damage that's happened to it. So that car has moved from where it was right on the approach towards Wilson, so it's been pushed or driven a little bit further round the corner, a little more out of harm's way, but will still need scooping up. And in fact, is Mike Price still going to try and drive the car further out of harm's way? The car is still motive, as you can see at the back of the shot there, but I think he's trying to nestle it right the way up against the barriers. So, under safety car, let's just run you down through the order in the early stages. Of course, this is the very early stages. All right, there is the reason for the safety car, because it does look as though Simon Orange has not been able to limp the Ginetta out of harm's way as yet. That's coming down towards the end of the Bentley straight by the look of things. You can see must be a rear suspension damage or toe link broken, because you can see the car crabbing down the straight. I think Simon should be able to bring that car in towards the pit lane. He is already confirmed as the Group GTA champion for this year. I think he's already now confirmed after yesterday's results as the Sporting Challenge champion. That's 4 drivers that compete without a pro in the pit stop races, but that car will be destined for the pit lane, and Mike Price has decided he wants to drive his car back round, probably, I would imagine, to park up behind where James Simons pulled in, which was right on the approach towards Agostini. So, start of the race then, number 88, Sam Neary leads and leads Group GT3. Second is Steve Burgess, who leads Group GTO. And third, having had the clutch replaced overnight, is John Dillon's Lamborghini, which is also running in Group GT3. Fourth is another Group GT3 car, that is Seamus Jennings. And fifth, again, is Group GT3, which is Morgan Tilbrook. Completing the top 6 is the orange Porsche, number 5 of Richard Chamberlain, therefore he is second in Group GTO, and 7th will be the Group GTC leading Ferrari of Roy Millington, who so far this weekend has had a very good weekend at the wheel of his Ferrari. I think 2 group wins just eluded him yesterday. He had a group win and a group second, if memory serves me correctly. 8th place is another Group GT3 car, that's the blue and orange Ferrari just heading through the shot there, which is Laurent Demise. Graham Tilley in the Nissan is in 9th place, and completing the top 10 will be Warren Gilbert. Other group leaders just outside of the top 10. Number 35, Nick Phelps, leads Group GTB. Leading Group GTA is the number 212 Ginetta, which for this race will be Stephen Walton. And leading Group GTH is going to be the number 26 McLaren, which is going to be Tom Rawlings for this race. So that gives you the group leaders and the top 10. The cars that have been limping their way around, Simon Orange has made it back into the pit lane. One of our brave Snetterton marshals also heading out to pick up bits of debris on the track. And hopefully, with most of the cars that had problems befall them on that first lap, most are now largely out of harm's way, and the bits and pieces strewn around the track have been picked up. We might be able to go green at the end of this lap that we are on, which is going to be lap number 3 currently. So the field of cars in single file, still trying to weave to try and maintain some tyre temperature. They'll be on and off the brakes as well to try and maintain some brake temperature, which all helps as well. We can see Charlotte Gilbert's already picked up a few places from the back of the grid, as the Team Orange with JMH crew inspects the damage to the left rear of Simon Orange's car. But I suspect with suspension damage or toe links broken, that is going to be it for that car. They will not be able to do anything other than assess the damage, park the car in the garage and get to work straight away to try and get the car repaired in advance of the pit stop race that comes up later on today that concludes the 2021 championship season. So clock still continuing to tick. Sam Neary waiting patiently behind the safety car, which will extinguish its lights down towards the bottom of the Bentley Straight, or as it heads up towards the kink at the bomb hole, will be largely where the safety car would tend to extinguish its lights. So not as yet, as it heads onto the top of the Bentley Straight, now out of Williams, the right-hander. But down towards the bottom of the Bentley Straight, that's when we might see the lights flicked off. And if we do, that's the indication that we'll be back to green flag racing next time through. So there's Laurent Demise and Graham Tilley weaving from side to side. Had a good chat with Graham Tilley yesterday. Thoroughly enjoys driving this Nissan, and is at the moment not quite sure what the plans might be for the 2022 championship season. He'll certainly be racing something. It's highly likely to be GT Cup. It could, or it might not be the Nissan. So he is just waiting to see. He's going to re-evaluate after this weekend and think about it over the winter, and then maybe see as to what the plans for him will be for the 2022 championship season. So lights are off on the safety car now, which means that last little bit of weaving just being done. Sam Neary behind the wheel of the Team ABBA Racing Mercedes. That is a car that has done more overall winning than any other car this season. Last time we were here at Snetterton in June, it won all 4 races. It even overcame its success seconds to secure victory in all 4 races over the course of the weekend. But we're about to get this race back underway at the end of this lap, and Sam Neary has got restarted quite quickly actually, and has got the jump on Steve Burgess, who I'm not saying was caught napping, but maybe I expected Sam Neary to get his foot down a little bit later on towards the lap. So it's been a really good restart from Sam Neary as he propels the Mercedes over the start-finish line. He leads overall and leads Group GTO. That car there, Steve Burgess, is second and leads Group GTO. Sorry, Sam Neary's in GT3. And third is John Dillon at the restart, but none of them are quite close enough to each other as they head onto the brakes in the Wilson hairpin. Looks as though Seamus Jennings, the man from Northern Ireland, still doing a really good job at the wheel of the GCAT Racing Porsche, managing to keep at bay Morgan Tilbrook's Enduro Racing McLaren, which had a group win in the first of the races yesterday. That sits there, the white and orange McLaren, in 5th position, as the race leaders head up towards the braking area for Agostini on lap number 4 at the moment. Richard Chamberlain and the Porsche goes through. There's Roy Millington, the number 56 car, current leader of Group GTC, his Ferrari. He's got another Ferrari behind him. They might look similar, but they do run to different specifications. So the all-red Ferrari, Roy Millington's, is a Ferrari Challenge spec car. The car that sits behind the dark blue and orange car, Laurent Demise, that is a full GT3 specification car. So has different aero on it, probably has different power outputs as well, and at the moment the Ferrari Challenge spec car, the Group GTC car, is ahead of the Group GT3, which means that, yeah, Roy Millington is again doing another cracking job actually to stay ahead of arguably what are more powerful or better planted cars around this rather fast and equally as much technical Snetterton 300 circuit. Graham Tilley is the next car up. He's in 9th place, and then Warren Gilbert is behind him at the wheel of the Tomcats Racing Lamborghini. Then it's Mike Brown, who is under attack from the Group GTB leading Porsche of Nick Phelps. So Nick Phelps pushing hard. Nick has been a real star of GT Cup this year. He's quietly gone about his duties, doing lots of winning in Group GTB. And yesterday stitched up the Group GTB Championship after what had been a bit of a difficult week for him. So nice to see that Nick is out, because at the beginning of the week it was very doubtful whether we'd see him this weekend, but a late call to Benji Hetherington to prep the car means that he has arrived. Now, were we going to see Roy Millington picked off there? I think Laurent Demise was having a quick look as they went up towards Richie's corner. See the nose of the Porsche of Nick Phelps dip, and no, Roy Millington still hangs on to it. Laurent Demise couldn't squeeze his way through. Graham Tilley's now bottled up behind as well, so that's what, 3 cars fighting over what will be 7th, 8th and 9th positions. There through shot goes the leading cars in Group GTH as well that we need to try and keep an eye towards. The number 26 McLaren of Tom Rawlings currently leading that. Mo Ritson brought that car to a group win yesterday as well. Now Roy Millington, I thought, was going to outbrake himself there. I thought it was a puff of smoke, but it isn't. It's the cement dust that's been distributed around the circuit to soak up some oil that's been put down from an earlier race. But Roy Millington doing a really good job. His Ferrari 488 just ahead of the similar car, but the GT3 spec car of Laurent Demise, and that's a spin, and that's the car that was leading Group GTA. Damage to the front, I'm afraid to say, of Stephen Walton's Make It Happen Racing Ginetta, and that is slap bang in the middle of Agostini by the look of things. So that again, hopefully, will be able to be driven out of harm's way by the driver. If it's stricken there in the middle of the circuit, then that, without question, is going to cause a problem. No, he's able to get the car out of harm's way and will pull the car off on the grass, and that's a real shame for the Make It Happen Racing Ginetta. It was leading Group GTA, but quite what happened, I'm not entirely sure. Now, Seamus Jennings is having to stick his elbows out a little bit here in 4th place to try and keep Morgan Tilbrook's McLaren at bay. Morgan Tilbrook, who has come on so well, I would say, of all of the drivers, I think, since being partnered up with Marcus Clutton, racing this car, not just in this championship, they've been racing it in the British GT Championship as well, but his driving has just got better and better, and he's now a very quick amateur driver, more than a match for any of the other AMs that we've got out there. And he's doing a really good job of hounding Seamus Jennings, while Seamus Jennings is looking to try and get the Porsche onto the podium slots. He's got John Dillon's Lamborghini just ahead. And that will be for 3rd, 4th and 5th overall in the race, but more importantly 2nd, 3rd and 4th in the GT3 category. You just saw there also Stephen Walton out of the car from where he's parked it, inspecting the damage to the front of the Ginetta. But for John Dillon, it's a new clutch in that car yesterday. That was the problem, why he had to spin out on circuit and brought out the safety car, got the car going again, pulled into the pit lane, but yeah, the clutch had failed in reality, it appears. They're live to about 2,000 kilometres on the car by Scott Sport, who prepare it, and they were not expecting the clutch to start to have problems. It had problems in race number 1. They thought it might see it through race number 2, but no, they had to loosen off the engine, take out the gearbox, replace the clutch overnight. Fairly easy job, I understand from Simon Lansbury, who is one of the members of the team there, as Morgan Tilbrook looks to try and attack. Could he squeeze his way through? No, the door is not going to be open. Seamus Jennings was far enough ahead as they went in towards Brundle and Nelson that time through, so it's still Porsche in what is 4th position. It's still McLaren in 5th place as they thread their way through the right-hander at the bomb hole and then weave their way through the ever-present right-hander at Coram and then onto the brakes. Difficult part to try and get the car anchored up here because you're still turning right whilst trying to brake for the left-hander at Murray's, the final corner. So it's a very difficult corner where you need to slowly increase the brake pressure as well and try and straighten up the car heading in towards the corner. So this is the fight for 3rd, 4th and 5th over the start-finish line. Lamborghini from Porsche, from McLaren, all of the time closing in the background as well is the orange Porsche 935 of Richard Chamberlain. Richard doing a really good job again. And I think we've had a shuffle for 7th, 8th and 9th last time through because Roy Millington, I think, might have dropped down through the order a little bit there at the wheel of his Ferrari. Yes, he has. Yeah, so through now goes Matt Brown. So that's Roy Millington's lost 4 places now since we last picked up on it. So Mike Brown goes through. Also having gone through will be Warren Gilbert and Graham Tilley and Lauren Demise as well. So was that a small mistake from Roy Millington because it has cost him not just 3 places, it's cost him the lead of Group GTC now because the silver and light green Lamborghini of Warren Gilbert has now picked up the Group GTC lead, and that could be important for the championship for Warren Gilbert. So he leads the group. That's potentially maximum championship points for him. Still bits of debris around the track as well by the look of things. I think that's bits of Ginetta that are still strewn at Agostini. So Warren Gilbert on his merry way, leading Group GTC. Now, Roy Millington, I think, is an invitation class car anyway, so it probably hasn't actually added to the points tally for Warren Gilbert, because whilst Roy Millington was leading Group GTC, he wouldn't pick up the championship points because he's only an invitation class car for this weekend, not running sufficient rounds so as to count the tally towards the championship. There's a few cars that are like that. For Warren Gilbert, he would rather win the group outright and pick up the winner's trophy later on, but more importantly, it's the championship points that he'll be thinking about. He leads his group. Sam Neary leads his group and of course leads the group overall, so the gap that existed between them coming into this weekend has been shortened very slightly. 32 points you could argue is still the gap, but we know that that black Mercedes there is going to in reality lose or not gain the 20 points to the championship tally that potentially Warren Gilbert and Jensen Lund will do. If their car can start the final race of the weekend, they would pick up an extra 20 championship points relative to the number 88, because you have to start all the final 8 races in the championship to pick up those bonus points. And as we say, that number 88 Mercedes was not able to start race 4 at Donington last time out, so it is not going to pick up the extra bonus points. So the gap, that's what, 32 points. I think Richard said it was 31. We've got mathematically it's 32, but that could potentially be down to 12. But it, as I say, it does mean that Lamborghini has to start the final race of the weekend to pick up those points. Richard Chamberlain sliding the 9.35 as he came out of Agostini there. Greg Caton still sticking his elbows out to try and prevent the car of Morgan Tilbrook from firing his way through, but a small mistake there going in towards Oggies has allowed Morgan Tilbrook up the inside of the GCAT Racing Porsche, and through he goes. Morgan Tilbrook picks up what is going to be 4th position. The Porsche drops down into 5th place as they start to build the speeds and the momentum again all the way down the Bentley Straight into the braking area for Brundle and Nelson. Another very difficult braking area, actually, because you've got to brake, turn the car in and brake again, really. It's very, very difficult, that section of the circuit. You have to think about it, make sure that the car is settled and that you're not heavily on the brakes as you're trying to turn the car. So now that Morgan Tilbrook has got past the Porsche, he is already starting to pull away, isn't he? So the amount of daylight is increasing McLaren to Porsche, but what is happening is that the McLaren of Morgan Tilbrook in his newly acquired 4th place is now starting to close up on John Dillon. So that's the next little thing that we need to try and keep an eye on here. And are we going to see John Dillon coming under pressure for what would be 3rd position? Here they come up towards the braking area for Ritchie. 7 3/4 minutes of this race to go. John Dillon, without question, has been caught by Morgan Tilbrook, and the relative difference in terms of lap times between the pair of them was Morgan Tilbrook was 1 second quicker than John Dillon, whilst out front Sam Neary, as you just saw on your screen, popped in the fastest lap of the race, 1 minute 50.716, and that is going to be the fastest race lap that we've had, of course, all weekend so far because of the substantively worse conditions yesterday. So in towards the braking area for Agostini. Mercedes leads, Radical 2nd, Lamborghini 3rd, McLaren 4th, Porsche 5th at this stage. Another Porsche in 6th place, the first of the Ferraris. Laurent Demise is there in 7th. It's a Nissan in 8th place, an Aston Martin in 9th, and another Lamborghini in 10th. As ever, many manufacturers represented, and what's that, 8 different manufacturers inside the top 10 places again? Goes to show the variety that has always been the case in the GT Cup Championship. Continues to be the case year after year after year. So down the Bentley Straight, this is Morgan Tilbrook's opportunity to pick up a bit of a toe from John Dillon, but he's too far away, I suspect. He'll move around to try and see what's going on, whilst, as you can see the bottom left of your screens there, Race Control issuing a black and white warning flag for the number 88 car. That's the race leader, that's Sam Neary, and what that will be for is going beyond the circuit limits too many times. You can do it once and get away with it, you do it twice, you get a warning. You do it a 3rd time, you would end up with a 5-second penalty. So Sam Neary doesn't need to push too hard at the moment. He leads the race reasonably comfortably from Steve Burgess. Another car picking up a black and white warning flag is going to be Ian Campbell at the wheel of the Greystone Racing McLaren. He's down in something like 21st position, 6th in group at the moment. So Sam Neary doesn't need to push that hard. He's got 11.5 seconds gap between himself and Steve Burgess, so just back things off again is all he needs to do. Control the race for the remaining, 5.5 minutes just over. This is the leader of Group GTH at the moment. Now, Tom Rawlings has been under pressure for the last few laps from Josh Jackson, and Josh, having had a retirement yesterday, will be hugely keen to try and add to his championship tally. Josh is already confirmed as the Group GTH champion for this year, but he wants to try and pick up another group win if he can. But for Tom Rawlings, he'll be pushing as hard as he can. He had a good result yesterday, did the team at least, when Mo Ritson was driving the car in the sprint race, and they are looking to try and make it back-to-back group wins if they can, but Josh Jackson has got other ideas as he tries it round the outside at Ritchie's corner. Need to be careful. He's going to try and cut back on the exit. Tom Rawlings is wise to that and covers it off as they head into the braking area for the tight right-hand hairpin at Wilson. Get cleanly off the corner is what they'll need to try and do now, and Tom Rawlings, I think, is going to feel the pressure here and the squeeze from Josh Jackson, who's moving around, trying to do anything to try and put off Tom Rawlings that lies ahead, but a good squabble it is. This is for 14th and 15th places overall, but as I say, is for the lead of Group GTH, and Tom Rawlings is having to drive quite defensively here. Nice wide line taken in from Josh Jackson to try and get the undercut on the way out of the corner, but again, Tom Rawlings will just make sure that he gets that covered off on the approach up towards the fast left-hand kink at Hamilton. And then what he then needs to do is make sure that he doesn't get dive-bombed up the inside by Josh Jackson as they head in towards the braking area for Oggies. But no, the two McLarens are absolutely nose to tail as they head through the right-hander. So good driving by both, pushing each other hard. It's close, it's more than fair at this stage as they head on to the Bentley straight. And for Tom Rawlings, the key is, get cleanly off Williams corner, which means that you then carry that momentum all the way down the Bentley straight, and he should just about, I think, hang on to the position as they head in towards the braking area for Brundle and Nelson, with now less than 4 minutes remaining on the clock. So Tom Rawlings still just about managing to do it. The number 26 car, run and prepared by Paddock Motorsport. The number 1 car that sits behind is run by Orange Racing, powered by JMH. And these are 2 cars that have been towards the sharp end of Group GTH for the vast majority of the season so far. We perhaps haven't seen as many group wins for the number 26 cars. We have the number 1, but they've always been there or thereabouts when they've had the luck on their side, but perhaps have had worse luck than other teams. Now this is still for what will be 3rd and 4th place. John Dillon still under attack from Morgan Tilbrook, who has not been able to unlock the door to the podium just as yet. He sits there in 4th place at the wheel of the orange McLaren, not for want of trying, but he's got to try and scratch his head and work out where, over the course of the next 3 minutes, he might have an opportunity to try and squeeze his way by. And John Dillon, I think, is feeling the pressure because he is now also receiving the black and white warning flag for transgressing circuit limits. So again, he's walking a bit of a tightrope here. John Dillon has got to stay within the confines of the circuit. If he doesn't, a 5-second penalty would, without question, undo him, wouldn't it? And that would put Morgan Tilbrook onto the overall podium spots. So nose to tail out of the bomb hole, nose to tail as they head round the never-ending right-hander at Corham, and then get the car straightened up onto the brakes and through the left-hander at Murray's, about to what will be conclude lap number 11 this time through. Elsewhere down through the order, James Guess at the wheel of the number 82 Aston Martin is having a really good little squabble. Another McLaren just ahead of him will be Steve Ruston's car, the Signature RV backed and entered car run by Paddock Motorsport again. That is a team that's co-owned by Kelvin Fletcher and Martin Ploughman, who race as a partnership in British GT. Happy birthday as well, Martin Ploughman. 34 years of age today is Martin Ploughman. But for 3rd and 4th place, John Dillon will be seeing absolutely nothing but orange in his wing mirrors, because Morgan Tilbrook is pushing as hard as he possibly can, and you can see how hard he's pushing because he's sort of bouncing over the curbs on the way out of Palmer in pursuit of the Lamborghini. There's traffic just up the road that they'll have to deal with as well. That will be the Century Motorsport number 9 Ginetta in the hands of Alex Stevenson, and I think they're going to catch that just as they get towards Hamilton, which is going to delay both of them. But John Dillon needs to deal with the traffic here. Morgan Tilbrook will try and follow through as well. Alex Stevenson sensibly just blends out of the throttle and lets both of them go by, so they can roll up their sleeves again, slug it out like a pair of heavyweight boxers, and still try and work out as to who's going to finish on the last step of the podium and who is unfortunately going to just miss out on it at the moment. It's Morgan Tilbrook that is just missing out on a podium slot. He weaves around again to try and distract John Dillon. He's still too far behind. More black and white warning flags going out, this time for Mike Brown in the Aston Martin that sits there in what will be 9th position. So that's the ultimate speed car that rejoins the championship for this weekend. But for our race leader, Sam Neary, now on to the last lap of the race. So propelling himself out of Ritchie's corner with a very handsome lead. He could just control the pace, really. Off has gone James Guess. It has been a rotten weekend for Feathers Motorsport. James Guess had a spin coming out of Palmer yesterday and then had contact whilst he tried to rejoin the circuit. He's had a spin going into Palmer today, and that is going to undo all of the hard work that he had been doing, I'm afraid. So he will rejoin. There is no damage to the car, but again, that has dropped it way down through the order. So the clock has ticked to 0. Our race leader, Sam Neary, is nearly 13 seconds ahead of Steve Burgess, who has got about 12 seconds between himself and this little battle that we were just looking at there, Morgan Tilbrook and John Dillon. But for Sam Neary, there's still work to do. He might have a big advantage, but he's still got to carve his way through the traffic. So through he's gone past the Ron Johnson Ferrari, he goes past Charlotte Gilbert's Marcos Mantis, and it looks as though Sam Neary is on course for another win here at Snetterton for what has been a very successful circuit for them. And Morgan Tilbrook's done it. He's managed to unlock the door. He's got himself on the podium, and that is at the expense of John Dillon, I'm afraid to say. So it looks as though the Scott Sport Lamborghini has dropped to 4th overall in the race now. That would still mean that it would finish third in its group, but for John Dillon, an overall podium would have been a great return for the hard work of replacing the clutch from the team overnight. Now, Steve Burgess is heading up towards the final corner very shortly. Coming out of the final corner now comes Sam Neary. He is on course, and Team ABBA Racing for yet another win in the GT Cup Championship. Over the start-finish line comes Sam Neary. That's exactly what they wanted to do, to claim maximum points in their group. And that potentially moves them another step closer to the championship as we head into the pit stop race later on today. That will be the final round of the championship. Steve Burgess grabs the checkered flag in second place, so he will take the win in Group GTO. And we await the arrival of the third place car over the start finish line any second now. It will be Morgan Tilbrook, will it, that hangs on to third position, who comes through to take the checkered flag. Yeah, Morgan Tilbrook finishes in third place. John Dillon will finish in fourth. Richard Chamberlain, good run from Richard in the orange Porsche. He will finish in fifth place. And then as we await the arrival of the sixth place car over the start finish line, it should be the Porsche that finishes in sixth place in the hands of Seamus Jennings. So, Seamus Jennings, did he hang on to it? He hasn't taken the checkered flag just as yet, it is showing, but there are a few issues with the timing system I've noticed over the course of the race that we've been having. So, Seamus Jennings, yes, now confirmed as having finished in sixth position. Through comes the Ultimate Speed Aston Martin, Mike Brown having done a good job in that race. And Warren Gilbert comes through now, that's an important one, taking the checkered flag in 10th position, the number 9 Lamborghini. That is a win for him in Group GTC, which keeps his overall championship hopes alive, as it does for, of course, the Nearys, who claimed their overall win and the win in Group GT3. So those are the two cars that are battling it out for overall honours in the championship. So we'll wait and see. Now, that's a tyre stack that's been clobbered by somebody. It should be on the grass. You can see it's right on the edge of the circuit there. So somebody has had a moment somewhere and has clipped that tyre stack. That might be one of the cars that potentially had some issues earlier on in the race, so we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, for Sam Neary, he'll be pleased. For Warren Gilbert, that car there, watched by Jensen Lum, who, as we say, had a fairly significant operation a week or so ago, so he wasn't able to drive at Donington Park. He is here as a spectator, I think, feeling the pain and feeling a little bit tired at the moment. He should be at home resting up, but he doesn't want to miss out on the potential of the fact that the car that he owns, that car there, number 9, that he shared all season with Warren Gilbert, they are still in the championship hunt, and that would be a great result for them. They've pushed Sam and Richard Neary hard all season, not raced together because they're in different groups, but just accumulated lots of points in their respective groups, and it looks as though it's going to go down, which is always nice, isn't it, to the final championship race of the 2021 season, to try and work out as to who is going to lift the title for this year and follow in the footsteps of the likes of Simon Orange and Josh Jackson, who won the championship last year. Steve Ruston and John Whitehouse were the champions the year before. Chris Murphy, who was partnered up with Adam Hatfield, won it in 2018. Scotsman Graham Davison won it in a McLaren MP412C in 2017. Jordan Witt in the Bentley was 2016. Wayne Mars and Charlie Hoddings, Jim Gedding, Jeff Wyatt, Derek Johnston, Andy Ruin, Marco Pullen, all have been the champions over the course of the last, 10, 11 years in GT Cup. So who is going to add their name to the overall championship title for 2021? We'll find out later on this afternoon. But let's confirm the results for you in the meantime. The win in the final sprint race of the season, the penultimate round of the championship, goes the way of Sam Neary, and in second place was Steve Burgess, who came home first in Group GTO. Morgan Tilbrook was third, ahead of John Dillon in fourth place, and Richard Chamberlain was in fifth. Then it was Seamus Jennings, Lauren Demise, Graham Tilley, Mike Brown, and in 10th place, Warren Gilbert claimed top honours in Group GTC, keeping the championship alive. Roy Millington was in 11th place, with Andre Borodin in 12th place. Nick Phelps was first home in Group GTB in 13th position. Then it was Josh Jackson, Tom Rawlings, Chris Kemp, Paul Bailey, Steve Ruston, David Holloway, and then it was going to be Ian Campbell who completed the top 20. Josh Jackson claiming the win in Group GTH. The first car home in Group GTA was car number 118, which was James Townsend in that race. Charlotte Gilbert finished in 22nd place, with Ron Johnson in 23rd, ahead of Carl Cavers, followed by the number 17 car of Patrick Collins. James Guest, despite his fifth spin, came home to finish in 26th position, ahead of the 27th place car, which was the number 22 car, which for that race was Richard Mason. And then it was Chris Murphy, Alex Stevenson, and after that, that was where we saw the retirements for the Make It Happen Racing Ginetta. They weren't the only cars to retire, though, as they would be classified outside of the finishers. Retirements also for Simon Orange, for the Balfe Motorsport car of Mike Price, and also for James Simons very early on. So that gives you the results for the penultimate round of the championship. Michelle, we've got another race to look forward to later on, and a champion still to crown.
Yes, we do indeed, Mark. It is still all to play for, which is great, but Sam Neary doing just what was needed in that race and avoiding those penalty points as well, which is great. Cars are heading to Parc Fermé now. We will be back with the final race of the season a little bit later on, just before 4 o'clock. I think we're scheduled to be back at 3:55. So stay tuned across all the social media channels for GT Cup, and we'll see you a bit later.